Hello, my name is Beate Aure and I'm a student at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. The article Experience from Allowing Maximum 2 contract tires in the Vertical Supply Chain is written by me with the help of my co-writers Aure Lædre and Lohne. Several analysis reports, official agency reports, and industry initiation reports have indicated that earlier measures taken have not prevented an escalation of criminal activities over the last 2 decades in the Norwegian AEC industry. Construction site projects have peculiar characteristics, as for example, site production, unique product, temporary organization, rendering them vulnerable for work-related crime. The Norwegian government presented in January of 2015 a strategy to combat work-related crime that resulted in a national coordination group and a joint action plan. Among other measures, the government strategy resulted in a requirement that restricts the number of contract tires in construction projects. The main contractor can only have maximum 2 contract tires in the vertical supply chain. This is a response to the insight that when a supply chain becomes complex, the problem and challenges will follow. A long supply chain renders it difficult to verify that suppliers feel their obligation to workers and public authorities. Little research has been done on whether these measures work and on what the consequences are for the contractors. Therefore, the study examines the experience of various main contractors addressing the following research questions. How do contractors satisfy the requirement of maximum 2 contract tires? And what challenges entail the requirement of maximum 2 contract tires for the contractors? The research was conducted using a scoping literature review and 6 semi-structured interviews. The literature review was initially linked to the work-related crime in the construction industry and later conducted based on the research questions. The literature searches were limited to databases such as Scopus, Web of Science, American Society of Civil Engineering, and Google Scholar. In order to identify relevant literature from these databases, a filtration technique was applied to sort out unrelated literature and thus make the search more efficient. And finally, the content of every literature source was evaluated according to credibility, objectivity, accuracy, and suitability. The main source of information and results were obtained from 6 interviews with project managers and different advisors in main contractor's firm and 1 advisor from a Norwegian public client. In total, the interviews came from 3 different companies. The interviews were selected based on their knowledge about the requirement, their positions such as safety, health, working environment advisors, project managers, and advisor in the field of seriousness follow-up, in addition to their experience with work-related crime on construction sites. By including both advisors and project managers, the result could reflect the experience of those at the construction site and those at the headquarters of the companies. The idea behind requiring maximum 2 contract tires was because of suspicion that the last business in the vertical supply chain impossibly could gain any profit, as it was too many subcontractors above that had taken their share of the profit. For example, as stated in an interview, there could be circumstances where a subcontractor had none of his own employees present on a project, but the job was passed on to someone else. It could also occur that the main contractor himself wasn't informed that there were 2 or 3 subcontractors under various subcontractors. This was considered insufficient, and it was agreed that a system for better control had to be implemented. There has been a diminishing control consistently with the increasing of contract tires in the supply chain. The organization of the measure was intended to create better control and follow up opportunities for the main contractors. In addition to criminal businesses would have more difficulty in deducting taxes and obtaining profit with fictitious invoices. There is reason to believe that the problem considering fictitious invoices has decreased as the criminal businesses no longer have the opportunity to hide criminal acts far down the vertical chain. Some literature indicates that the reduction of contract tires in the vertical chain has had a positive effect on the main contractor's follow up. The result in this study shows somewhat otherwise. The main contractors still experience some challenges associated with following up the subcontractors, such as to follow up that they obey and comply with the requirements set by the main contractor. It is argued that previously the main contractor wouldn't have any control over the third or fourth subcontractor in the vertical chain, but this doesn't mean that the upper subcontractors are better followed up now that the requirement is implemented. But because of the now closer and more directly contractual relationship between the main contractor and the last subcontractor, it should be easier for the main contractor to follow up due to access, transparency, and connection. Today, the follow-ups are mainly happening in a Norwegian computer program called HMSREG, roughly translated to HSE registration. This program is relatively new and is mainly used by the biggest contractors. In the program, it is possible for both the client and main contractor to discover the deviations of the subcontractors as early as they upload documentation, and the system detects deviation immediately. HMSREG is considered the most important tool and help device that is used in the Norwegian AEC industry today. The result in this study did not reveal large challenges that the main contractors and clients experience, but rather on the contrary. From the interviews, it seems like contractors did not struggle with being limited to 2 contract tires on standard construction projects, and would rather acclaim the requirement for cleaning up a rather messy chain management issue. The experience from the interviews is that they have managed to adapt and operate normally. The times the contractors has been challenged on the necessity of 3 contract tires has been are when special buildings and arrangements and a specialist must be appointed. In the cases where the extensions of subcontractors are needed due to specialist and not capacity, is often a reason for acceptance. The conclusion is that the contractors satisfy the requirement of maximum 2 contract tires with the help from the data program HMSREG or HSE registration. The program is a tool to maintain better control and overview. Maximum 2 contract tires entails a shorter but wider supply chain, which can prevent work-related crime. A shorter supply chain can prevent hidden crime from appearing down in the chain, where it can be challenging for the main contractor to uncover. The requirement itself is good, but it must be supplemented with other tools to be able to fill its purpose as a whole. It is not a waterproof measure against work-related crime alone. HMSREG or HSE registration strengthened the requirement and the measures taken, and has a potential to counteract work-related crime in the future. There are not many challenges entailing the requirement of maximum 2 contract tires for the contractors. The overall experience with the requirement are positive. The main contractors experience control when using the requirement. The only challenge is in this matter is when their subcontractors need specialist competence or specialist equipment, and therefore being challenged on only being restricted to two contract hires. There are still some communicational difficulties with securing the contract and seriousness requirements down the contract chain between the main contractor and the subcontractor, but it appears to not be worse than before. The contractors have a belief that the requirement is not limiting their work, but rather cleans up a long and messy vertical chain, which benefits them as a legal company.